It's undeniable that this year has brought about a lot of change. Change in jobs, maybe, change in the places that we work, changes in the way that we live and interact. Change can be hard, it can be painful, and it can be beautiful and uplifting. So my business partner, Richard Rieckenberg, and I are going to talk about change and some different ways that we can look at it as we approach this new year. If you've listened to this podcast at all over the years, you've heard Richard's voice more than once. He has a really impressive career working as a submarine captain during the Cold War, mass care chief for the American Red Cross, and now he's an executive leadership coach with the Leadership Coaching Group. Listen in to me and Richard as we discuss the topic of change and approaching the new year.
Welcome to the Leadership Coaching Group's podcast. I'm your host, Liz Howard, an entrepreneur, author, and executive leadership coach. This is where I introduce you to the top experts that discuss the burning topics that leaders at all levels need to know about. My goal is to help you become a leader that you are confident others will want to follow. So, subscribe to the show, listen in weekly, and watch your confidence as a leader grow.
Hello, Richard.
Hi, Liz. How are you?
I'm trying to put on a whole new hat right now because as we're recording this, it is the middle of August 2020. And as some of our listeners might know, I have committed to doing batch recordings of all of the podcasts to make sure that I don't miss any episodes. So that means that I'm doing a whole lot of podcasts in kind of rapid fire succession. And we are wrapping up 2020's podcasts in August. So we had an idea that we should talk about some reflections on 2020, but the year's not over yet. And it's interesting to try to switch gears to kind of a reflective state when we're sort of right in the middle of it. How do you feel about this?
I have enough trouble thinking about the present instead of thinking about the present in the future. But we'll give it a shot.
So we're on the brink of the new year as this episode is being released. So 2021 is about to begin. So what's the first thing that you would want to say to our listeners now? Again, we're coming from the future or from the past, I guess, approaching future people. What's the first thing that you think is important to bring up?
As I say this, I don't know if at the beginning of the year things will be worse or things will be better. But I think there is something to be said for the strength of endurance. And I think there is something to be said for the ability to find oneself in the midst of a disaster.
The first time you're in a really different environment and you're experiencing unknown, it's scary. And you can feel a lot of anxiety. But once you've done it before, then you kind of have this sense of, okay, I need to take it one step at a time. I need to see what I really need right now to just get through today, through the moment. You learn to network a little bit. You learn to just kind of exist in a different way. And I think that there's so much beauty and strength in that. So what are you really, really proud of? You know, that we can beat ourselves up for things. And I do think we should be reflective on what we should do better. But it's the turn of the year. It's still the holiday season. What are you really proud of that you did? And what are you really proud of that has made you just a little bit stronger by having this unexpected experience? Because I'd imagine there's something.
And that's interesting. You and I were talking to one of your friends this last week, and I asked him the question. I said, when was the time that you thought that you were at the right place at the right time doing the right thing, in which you thought, this is what I was brought to this earth to do. This is what I was brought on this earth to accomplish and to learn, and think of that moment that you actually felt that way, and then think of the surroundings that influenced that moment, and use that to make you stronger, and use it to give your life some direction. And I think that's a very interesting thing to do at this point, because we can take those positive moments that come out of a result of change, and even unpleasant change, And think about, as you said, times at which you felt like I did the right thing, I made the right decision, and then use that to kind of help you in the future.
I agree with you. I have been doing a lot of really, really deep work on myself and a lot of thought work. And I'm, by the time this airs, hopefully, I have a totally different line of business that's begun. And as I was putting this together and talking to some, you included, advisors, coaches, some of my mentors that are guiding me on this path, I had this interesting moment where I realized this was a goal that I had set to begin 2 years ago. And so as I was talking about it to one of my coaches, I said, I'm behind schedule on it and I'm a little frustrated with myself. And she kind of brought to light that maybe I had finally just given it enough time to prepare to be ready, that I needed to do some work. I needed to think about the topic. I needed to, allow some space and time around it. And I realized that, there are a lot of things that can make you stressed and tired and angry. But what I wanted to be as a leader, as a facilitator, as a host, as someone showing up for this topic was a source of love. So if I wanted to be love, that's one thing. But when I started it, I was angry. So it's a really interesting pivot to make. Are you angry or are you what you aspire to be? And there is a difference. So I aspire to be love. I'm not totally there yet, but it's something that I've gained awareness of and I'm working towards every day in a lot of ways, personally, professionally, with people I don't even know. It is something that I am committed to working to every day. But if you're angry instead of what you aspire to be, that just takes a lot of power and energy away from you. And I don't know about anyone else listening, but I don't have much of that to offer to anyone else. If there's any energy, if there's any power that I have to do what I believe I should be working on, I don't want to give that away. And certainly not to something as fast burning as anger. I mean, it just isn't, I don't think it's the most advisable thing in the world.
I like that, Liz. And also it is because our feelings, we are social human beings, whether or not we feel ourselves to be social human beings, and we are affected by the moods of other people. And so just as anger begets anger, love begets love, kindness begets kindness. And so the choice is ultimately ours as to whether or not we want to become a beacon of kindness or kind of this black hole of anger. And at any given moment, we have that choice. And I think we need to start looking at life in that kind of a lens, as opposed to the lens of the immediacy of life. And I think opportunities like this very, very difficult year that we're going through kind of allow us to focus on what is more important holistically than what is more important on a day-to-day routine.
And I'd like to ask you, but I'll go first, if you have any kind of story about when putting kindness forth or putting positivity forth just brought more of that to you. And like I said, I'm happy to go first so that you have a little time to think, because I just came up with that out of the blue, but no pressure. But this was like a really important moment in my life. When I was in high school, there was a girl who was younger than me, and I just always thought she was the sweetest little thing. And for whatever reason, I mean, I know the reasons, but I'm not going to go into it on the podcast. She was always picked on and she had a really hard time. And I had pretty sure footing in high school. And so I kind of took her under my wing. And we had a nice little friendship and whatever. I never, really didn't see her after I graduated because she was younger than me. And we weren't particularly in touch. And then fast forward, I don't know, let's say 5 years. I don't remember the exact timeline. We, connected on social media in some way, shape, or form. And she asked if I would come to her home to visit her. And I was back in state. So I, of course, happily said, yes, I would. And I went over to see her, and I had no idea that she had a baby. And she named her daughter after me, which blew my mind. I mean, I I was not at a point in my life where I thought that I had had much impact on anything. In fact, I was kind of questioning a lot of what I was doing at that point in my life, for good reason. And to this day, I mean, this child is a teenager now, and it just has really struck me that it's so easy to assume that the things that we do don't have an impact and they don't matter and that it's not enough. And you have no idea how deeply impactful sometimes your kindness or sometimes your presence might be on another person. That just really has shaped a lot of the ways that I think, and is, it was a process. It's taken years. I don't know if I'm there yet, but it has kind of shown me, like, you always hear this, the saying, no good deed goes unpunished, but I disagree. I think that the good deeds sometimes take a little time to blossom, but you will see them over and over. And the way that they kind of amplify can be just the most beautiful thing.
I like that, Liz. And now you're going to make me say something, though, aren't you?
I sure am. There goes my kindness. See, I used it up in high school.
I can think of actually several little tiny stories, some with the Red Cross, some with the Navy, where I would take a moment out when in the Red Cross. I remember I was in a disaster in American Samoa, and it's a very difficult, trying thing. It was a hurricane it was an earthquake and a tsunami. Lots of death, unfortunately, a lot of pain associated with that. And the Mass-Care Chief doesn't have a lot of time. But it'd be interesting that during the daytime, I would take a little bit of time out, and I would get little tiny packets of cookies. And I would go to a village, and I would give out cookies to the children. And you might say that that's a kindness, but the person who benefited that, I mean, the children, loved it. And of course, it was for them, it was a treat. I mean, they didn't get an opportunity to get these things very often. And you might think of it as a kindness, but really the person who was being rewarded for doing that was me. It was giving me what I needed to feel good about my day, so that, a day when you're doing disaster relief can be overwhelmed. You can be overwhelmed by the death. You can be overwhelmed by the sadness. You can be overwhelmed by the suffering. But the counter to that was to do some small act of kindness, not because, you're doing it to help a person, but really you're doing it to help yourself as well, because that's what gave me the ability to continue and to wake up the next morning and face the next day's challenges, because it gave me something to feel good about, and it gave me something to think about before I went to sleep at night. The faces of the children, or how excited the children were, or sometimes doing a kindness for an old man or an old woman who were in a difficult position. And so in that case, the kindness was given back immediately for me. And it helped me get through some very difficult problems when you become in a fragile state as a result of those problems.
And isn't that interesting? The different ways that this kindness can manifest. I love, actually, though unintentional, the way that our stories were so different. I mean, you were talking about a kindness that showed up very quickly, and mine took years, and both were impactful and important. And obviously, I don't think either of us were trying to do anything hoping that, we'd be getting anything from anyone. That's not where we were coming from. I know you well enough to say that confidently, but it is an interesting effect. And I think that's a really great thing to consider as, we wrap up one year and start a new year. Is there's a lot of things that can happen. It can be difficult. It can be trying. But something that I've been learning over this past year is the way that I respond. And it's not just me, and I'm not trying to take, more on my shoulders. I think this is true for anyone. But what I've seen is that by being mindful about how I react in a situation, it has an impact on the situation. And just recognizing that it's not necessarily everything, but it does have an impact. And sometimes it does change the entire tone of a situation. If we can all kind of own that and say, okay, I do have the ability to impact the mood, the emotions, the way that things are kind of presenting, why wouldn't you? I mean, why wouldn't you be really conscious about keeping kindness at the forefront, keeping an awareness that you can impact that at the forefront? I mean, what a cool way to start the year.
I really like that, Liz. And I believe it absolutely. I believe it very strongly because in very difficult situations, we often can't control the circumstances of the situation, but we can always control our response to the situation. And it is our response to the situation which, one, allows us to either be overwhelmed or to thrive. But two, allows us to either learn from that situation and improve ourselves, or to just kind of wallow in the situation. And so we absolutely have control over that. It is a question of the discipline of our mind as to how we approach our ability to respond to external events. And this is a great opportunity for us to have learned that lesson.
So, Richard, if there was just one thought that you wanted to leave our listeners with as they approach a brand new year, what would it be?
It would be make a resolution. When I was a young man and a boy, I would always make a resolution. And then for years and years and years, I gave it up. And I thought, well, I'm doing okay. I'm feeling pretty good. Last couple of years, I've started to make a resolution again. And the resolutions for me are never, I'm going to lose 20 pounds or I'm going to, start jogging extra or stuff like that. I think those are great things to do. But the resolution should be, what kind of emotionally intelligent change do I want to make into my life? And if you can't think of one, I suggest you start with kindness and resolve to be kinder, or resolve to be more loving, or resolve to be more resilient, or resolve to be someone who is bringing a light into the world. Or, and no matter where you stand at this point, at the beginning of the year, resolve that you're going to be better at it. And then resolve how you're going to be better at it, and understand that tiny steps are the way to go, right? If you resolve to be kinder, then tell yourself, I'm going to do an act of kindness every day. Small act of kindness, tiny act of kindness. But I'm going to do it. And you can do acts of kindness that only take a couple of minutes, or even less than a couple of minutes. And after a while, then you don't have to resolve to do it every day, because it becomes part of you. And then you've grown that little bit. And if you continue to do that, I've become a big believer in the power of resolutions for improving myself. How about you, Liz?
I like that. And you kind of hit on the heart of what I wanted to say, which is just be kind. Going into this new year, we've all been through a lot. And, you've heard the saying before that you never know the battles that people are fighting. So be kind, but do it, And one of the most interesting things that I've heard people talk about, and I've found to be true, is whenever you need something, if you give it first, you're going to get so much more of it. So if you're hungry, give someone else a meal, and you will be surprised how many times you are given meals. If you're thirsty, give someone a drink. you'll have many, many cups of water or whatever in front of you. And with kindness, it's just this interesting thing, because you offer kindness to people and the same people aren't always the ones that repay that kindness to you, but it will come back, I think, in a much bigger measure. And I know this to be true from my own life. And so if there's something I could share with anyone who thinks that my words have any weight whatsoever, then that would be the one thing I'd say, is just trust the process. Maybe give it a little time, but you might be surprised that it doesn't take nearly as much as you think. So start the year and be kind.
Right. You've convinced me.
Good. Although you're a very kind person, but good. So I think that that's all that we have for this year.
And I wish you a good upcoming year, Liz.
You as well, Richard. And also to everyone who's listening in. So until 2021, bye-bye.
Goodbye now.
Hey guys, if you're getting anything out of this show, please head on over to iTunes and leave us a review. I read every single one, and honestly, your feedback is single-handedly what keeps this show going. So go to iTunes and let us know you're listening. Thank you so much for being a part of our community.